Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Pro. Today's guest is Nate Spear. Nate, welcome back to the podcast, my man.
Thanks for having me on. As always, always appreciate this continued support, and yeah, it's happy to be on.
For sure, man. So I think this is like number 3 or 4. So any of you who haven't listened to Nate on Behind the Muscle podcast previously, just go back. He's been on, I think, 2-3 other times. The first one, just the kind of the general backstory, like all of the normal episodes. And then we kind of recapped when he turned pro. And then today we're just going to kind of discuss his pro debut this past weekend in Boston, how the prep went. So today's episode will be a little bit different, fun. We're just going to chit chat as 2 bodybuilding fans, but one of us is a pro. So it's always a good time. So Nate, why don't you just kind of share a little bit about how this last prep went? We know that you turned pro at the end of last year and kind of flipped right around and went back into prep for your pro debut this last weekend at the Boston Pro. So how did the prep go for the Boston Pro? Did you guys do anything different? Was it pretty normal? Just dive into that a little bit for us, please.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, like you said, in December, we turned pro at nationals, and already my mind was sort of turning a little bit because I think a month prior to that and previous years, but because of COVID, they didn't have the Boston Pro, but it had been something in the works. Like they wanted to get it going, this and that. They didn't really have like a definite date because I think it changed a little bit in the previous years. But they announced it, right before nationals pretty much. And in the back of my mind, you never want to like sort of project into the future, but definitely in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, if I do, qualify to turn pro, at nationals, like I'll probably, continue on to the Boston Pro. A couple of reasons there, maybe not so obvious to the viewers, but one is I'm 40 minutes north from Boston. I live in New Hampshire, but it's pretty. New Hampshire and Massachusetts mingle very often. Like a lot of people work in Massachusetts, but live in New Hampshire because it's cheaper, etc. So, I'm obviously a local guy. Another reason is my family and my friends, including my mother, haven't really seen me compete for many years just because I had been qualified for nationals. I just kept qualifying for nationals because I was placing top 5 essentially. So I didn't have to do any local regional shows to requalify. So I think the last one I did was 2018 around here. So it's really good just to be able to around the home crowd, friends, family, gym goers, that kind of thing. Whereas before I'd have to travel. And then obviously, these shows are very expensive. So, one part of the being local is, you don't have to fly, or you don't have to get there a little more or earlier. So we did stay in a hotel, but we didn't have to go down until Friday night, the night before the show. So whereas before, if you're traveling, you want to get out there a day, maybe 2 early, get acclimated to the conditions, etc. So we didn't have to do that. So, the cost was much, much cheaper than doing, like, say, a nationals. So that takes into play. And then, like I said, I mean, it's the first show they've ever had in Boston. It was sort of a no-brainer for me. And at this point, I felt like I was... size-wise, I had enough size to not really get embarrassed per se. Whereas previous years, I was really close to turning pro, but I probably wouldn't have done it because I don't think my physique could have really, been comparable with some of these guys. So I felt sort of ready in that regard. Obviously, much more work to go, but enough to where I could stand with some of these guys and sort of match up. But as far as the prep goes, it was not too bad. We finished nationals, and right away, like I said, we knew we were going to do the Boston show. So we got right to work, but actually it's almost like you will pull back a little bit on the work. So I would say it was a 12-week stretch. So obviously we're already in condition. So we pretty much do like a little reverse diet, add some carbs back in, bring the cardio back, even bring some training back, just because, you're prepping for a long stretch, your body's a little beat up, your recovery is down, not quite as optimal, that kind of stuff. So for us, we believe in, for the next like 3-4 weeks, pull back maybe less frequency, little bit more, less volume, to let the body heal up a little bit. Obviously training with intensity, but you're sort of giving a little bit more rest. Whereas normally if you're pushing hard in a prep, might be training 6 days a week or with a little more volume, that kind of stuff. And then obviously one thing we pulled back on was like the compounds, which is really helpful and smart. So a tip for some people out there, instead of just like keep blasting all the way into the show, for about 6 weeks, we pulled back to get that recovery and health back in check. Obviously do it smart. And obviously too, or not obviously, but a big thing that helped was our sleep, started to get better because of some of that stuff, you know what I mean? We pulled back on. And obviously too, the stress of being close to a show, a little bit more food. So sleep goes a long way. A lot of people, when they compete, the sleep is very, not great. So obviously that can be detrimental to progressing, because you see a lot of guys, they try to do numerous shows and they get a little burnt out. So I think we had a good plan, because I don't think a lot of people can really necessarily do that 12-week stretch and continue to get better or match what they previously did, at least. So pretty much we, sort of hovered, I would say a little bit, 10 to 15 pounds above the stage weight. So, and then, like I said, we sort of ate up, it was a little bit easier, but I will touch base a little bit. It was a little mentally hard. It wasn't as physically hard because the cardio, was pulled back, and, we were eating a little bit more. But a lot of people don't realize you're still in a very lean state, body fat percentage wise. So your energy is still sort of not great. And doing everyday tasks are still hard. Even with the more food, you might not be quite as, it might not quite be as painful, but like the mental aspect is definitely there. It can be a little wearing because it's a long stretch. It's 3 months pretty much, to continue on. And mentally, like sort of you go in your head a little bit and you're like, man, why am I doing this type thing? And it just sort of drags on a little bit because you already did. The thing about prep that's really fun for me and really exciting and like wants me to do it is when I see the changes. So it's very exciting to say, okay, I just come off an off season. I made progress. I can see the new changes. It's very exciting. Well, I already saw that from nationals. So obviously there's not going to be much change, going into a show with 3 months. So it's one of those things you're sort of like, that excitement isn't quite as, prevalent. It's more just like, okay, I'm just going through the motions a little bit. So that was definitely hard, I would say. But then I would say, like, 4 weeks out, we started getting there. The excitement started coming because I knew the show was getting closer, and we sort of like could start working harder again. Because it's actually funny, because a lot of people would be like, oh, it must be sweet, like not having to work hard and just stay in shape. But honestly, the hard work is sort of what is like, I like, it's that challenge, you know what I mean? So yeah, some days obviously it sucks, but it's like rewarding, right? It's that challenge. So, we got to sort of turn the gas up a little bit, get cardio going and try to like push for fat loss again. That's sort of when the excitement and the motivation started coming again, and you sort of get into it. Because it's like prep, you're like living in this sort of tunnel vision type thing. So for a little while there wasn't that tunnel vision, if you would. And then, yeah, so pretty much we came into I would say maybe like a week or two out, things are starting to change really good again. And honestly, it's funny because I didn't really feel like I was going to be at my best. So I was a little worried. Like I was lean, but it wasn't like, maybe it's just meant like that mental piece I'm telling you, but I was just like looking at myself like, oh man, like, I don't really know, like sort of second guessing myself, and am I going to embarrass myself? you know? But it all really came together at the end, and it was really crazy. Like even at like 2 or 3 days out, I was still second guessing myself. And then, when we got to the hotel and, we took some pictures, and I was like, okay, like now it's on, like, I feel really good and we're there. So yeah, that was pretty much that stretch right there.
So I wanna ask you a little bit more, Nate, about kind of the mental side of things, because bodybuilding is, just as much mental as physical. And you kind of said that, just mentally it was a little bit of a drag, especially earlier in this prep for the Boston Pro. So what do you do, like kind of like when you start getting into maybe like a mental funk, or you're kind of just like, kind of going through the motions and it's just kind of dull and monotonous. I mean, do you have any type of place that you allow your mind to go, or do you have any mantras or quotes or anything mentally that you kind of help yourself to continue to move in the direction that you need to move?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, for me, it's like I use the mental piece to my advantage too. So it's all about creating mindset. So like, yeah, you're gonna have those moments where you're sort of second guessing yourself, but I also have the moments where I'm reassuring myself too, and saying like, okay, like, yeah, like I know, like I guess I've gotten this far for a reason, and I know like because I've been doing this for so long that the thoughts are sort of gonna come and go. So I guess it's sort of like a lot of it's maturity. Like I've been doing it for a long enough time to see ride it out type thing, and this will pass, those kind of stuff. And when I coach people too, I try to use that to my advantage too, because they've not been through the same experience. So a lot of people sort of have those like negative thoughts, and I will say, the best thing you can do is just ride them out and not do anything, because tomorrow you'll probably have a different mindset, because a lot of bodybuilders and whether you're amateur, pro, it doesn't really matter. You have this mindset usually of, okay, one day I feel like I could be Mr. Olympia, and then the next day I feel like I probably would get dead last at a regional show. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where, okay, if I think I'm not good enough, then it's sort of one of those things I just need to ride it out, I guess, and not act on it. So I think a lot of newer people, where they go wrong is, they get in their mind, that negative mindset, and they act on it, or they dig themselves a deeper hole, and continue to feed those thoughts. Where for me, I try to, block those out, shut those off as soon as they come up, and maybe just like go for a walk, or you know what I mean, like take a hot shower, something that's a little more relaxing. Just little stuff like that to sort of distract the mind. Because like I said, it's usually fleeting. Um, but uh, but yeah, as far as being in that limbo, it's definitely hard, and I've done it before, so that made it a little bit easier. But I always, um, when I'm sort of in that phase of like, okay, there's not much progress being made, I try to use that to my advantage, as far as like, okay, I know this will help me in the long run as far as like recovery goes, and like I said, more rest. And then when we need to push, there sort of be that that'll be available, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, man. That's great. Okay, so before we kind of talk about the past weekend here, I want to take a step back, Nate. So obviously, a lot of people knew who you were before you turned pro and stuff, because you were knocking at the door for several years. But and we already discussed, we kind of had the nationals wrap up and everything, but just that first month or a couple months after you turned pro, what was it? What was it like in terms of people reaching out to you, in terms of like Instagram, people, just asking you questions and things like that? Did that kind of go up a couple notches that first month or two after you turned pro? And what was it kind of like? Did you kind of already expect that? Were you already kind of ready for that, or was it a little overwhelming?
Yeah, definitely. That's actually a great topic, because part of that goes in uh like in tune with like what I was just talking about, because part of it was like there was such a high after nationals, like such excitement, and then it sort of just trickles away, and then there's not much. So that's another thing too for competitors, is there's going to be very highs and lows, like, so they call it like, the post show blues or whatever. So there's like a time, especially when there's a really big highlight, so it's like, oh, I turned pro, and it was like a very big response, because I was pretty close to Carlos, who is a genetic freak and obviously has a very bright future. So I think that helped me, as far as like give me a little bit more notoriety than just say winning my class against not many competition or whatever. And that show was obviously very deep. You had the Justin Shire and Jordan Janowitz, and so like those guys already had a lot of good notoriety as well. So it's one of those things where a lot of eyes were on that show. And the response was crazy. Like, after I got back home, it was like still like a lot of messages, and my coaching really took off after that, which was like a huge blessing. A lot of people reached out that way. So it was very like, I was definitely on a high. So then like, you know, that sort of trickles away and fades away as the weeks progress a little bit, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And obviously I was still trying to post, you know, as much as I can, but it's one of those things like the posts sort of fade away and the likes aren't quite as high. So it's one of those things like it definitely, it's not like directly like it's like an indirect effect, you know what I mean? Like I'm not like, oh man, like I need all these likes or whatever on my pictures, but it definitely is one of those things where you're like, oh shit, like, and it's not even necessarily like that's what I want, but it's just, I think human nature, you know? Um, so yeah, that was like an amazing response. And I really couldn't ask for, I didn't think it was going to be that crazy. You know what I mean? So that was really cool. And then, like I said, it sort of like faded away. So that might've been played a little bit into the mental piece because it's not quite as exciting. So it's very easy to like prep and do the work when there's a lot of excitement there, you know? So when it's a little dull, you know what I mean? It can be a little bit hard to, you know, keep going. Cause like I said, it's, you know, it's a 3 month stretch. So nationals, a lot of excitement. People are like, oh man, this kid looked great, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like in that middle part, because you're not even close to the Boston Pro yet. So no one's really talking about it. You're sort of like, okay, not much is going on, you know, and then, okay, now the show's coming up. It's a little bit more excitement, etc. So.
Makes a lot of sense. So it kind of reminds me of, you know, when you're you know, you're in eighth grade, you're in eighth grade, you know, you're kind of like, you know, you're the big, the big man on campus. Then you're a freshman in high school, and then you got to go through those 4 years to kind of climb the ladder. Then you're a senior, you're the big man on campus again. Then if you go off to college, you're a freshman, kind of starting all over again. Right. So kind of reminds me of that a little bit. So let's okay, I want to ask you, you brought up something in terms of this last prep, and we don't get into this topic a whole lot on this podcast, but I think, you know, the more I listen and consume bodybuilding content, I feel like, you know, if there is an opportunity to talk about some of this, and if my guests are open to it, I think it's important because there's a lot of young people out there, Nate, as you know, are just, in terms of, you know, the drugs, the PEDs and stuff in bodybuilding, there's just a lot of young people, a lot of people that are just, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of stuff that I think is being said that is inaccurate. So, you know, when you said that you guys kind of pulled back on the compounds and stuff within this last prep, what did that kind of look like in terms of where you were at leading up and into and through nationals? And then what did you kind of pull back? What did that kind of look like number wise, if you don't mind talking about that for this prep before you kind of push it again into the Boston Pro?
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's good to talk about this because there's a lot of, like you said, misguidance and a lot of assumption, right? Especially now that I'm a professional bodybuilder, like, oh, what are the pros doing and that kind of stuff. And, you know, I posted on my story a few times, like, so I check my blood pressure, you know, usually once a week, that kind of stuff. I use a lot of supplements to sort of balance everything out as far as like, obviously what we're doing is obviously going against the grain as far as health goes. So anything to sort of counteract or that, and, you know, keep that stuff in check. I think, you know, that's a huge tip for anyone at home. I want to say, you know, immediately after nationals, a week or two after nationals, we got blood work done, sort of made sure everything was in a line. Everything was like looking pretty good. There was a couple things where were elevated, but it was so fresh off of nationals that it was one of those things where like, okay, like obviously the liver's got to be a little elevated, enzymes, but it's one of those things where it's like how much is too much. So we felt like we were still in like a decent range. And like I said, you take some of the stuff out, like, so obviously you're going to use hardeners towards the end of the prep, you know what I mean? Stuff like Winstrol, halo testing, that's going to sort of, you know, obviously elevate that stuff. So you pull that out, obviously. So after the show, and stuff like, you know, some other hardeners, you pull that back, and just sort of go low key, you know, just like a little bit of testosterone, a little bit of primo, just for those 6 weeks, a little bit of proviron, and that was pretty much it. And then get those health markers back in check. And like I said, your body, sometimes you pull back and you can almost feel a better response because your body sometimes is in a higher stress level because of all the stuff you're sort of doing in that final stretch. So that's what I was saying, like your sleep sort of gets better, your recovery gets better. So I think it's good, you know, if you're sort of doing a long prep and you have like a window of opportunity to sort of go about it that way. And not only that, if you sort of kept everything in, the whole way, obviously it's not going to be as effective as well. So I think a lot of people get in this thing, they do stuff a little too early, and it's like, you just need to worry about the show. So I see a lot of guys, that I see and hear about some stuff going on, and they're doing stuff at like 12 weeks out or 14 weeks out, when it's really only essential maybe 6 or 5 weeks out, for the effect you're looking for the stage. There's no reason why you need to be, looking at a certain way at 8-6 weeks out if you're getting ready for a show, and it's obviously putting your health more in detriment. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. I think, I don't know if it's for like the Instagram stuff and that kind of stuff where, oh, I need to look a certain way, you know what I mean, before the show. But like my mind is always like, okay, like it only matters what I look like on show day as a professional bodybuilder. So, if I can do that, then I'm doing my job. So obviously it's nice to have like cool pictures on Instagram and that kind of stuff leading up to it. But I think a lot of people get way too, like, like you can look really great without all this stuff still. So I think a lot of people really think that, oh, it's a necessity and that kind of stuff. Because even like when I was, I have pictures of myself when I was like maybe 8 or 7 weeks out from Boston, and my stuff was all sort of cleaned out and that kind of stuff. And I still looked really great, still lean, still had striations in my glutes, that kind of stuff. Maybe not quite as hard and like not quite as like, vascular, but I still looked really great. And if I told someone, they would have no idea, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Like it's one of those things that only just because I know myself and I see pictures every day that I might be a little more aware of that, or my coach. But if you went up to someone, they would be like, oh man, you look freaking nuts. Or you must be like a week or 2 out, So I think sometimes it's a mental piece that, oh, we need to do this and do that. And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do is, like I said, is, check those health markers, you know what I mean, 3-4 times a year. Like, so for me, like now after the show, I'll check everything out again in maybe 6 weeks, see where we're at and that kind of stuff. And obviously, so after the show, our plan is just to sort of pull back on everything, and just recover. Obviously too, where you're doing 2 shows that and are a long stretch, so it's one of those things you want to take a break, even if you feel like you don't need it. I think it's still imperative. Still going and train, but not like just have fun with it. You know what I mean? So I'll just go into the gym, maybe 4 or 5 times a week, just do some, like one body part a week, not really track it, just go in, get a nice pump, move some stuff around. And then, maybe take a week off after like 4 or 5 weeks of doing that, just to sort of give the body a break. I don't really like taking a break immediately after the show because, like I said, another thing too is that post-show blues is sort of to try to keep some kind of that stability from prep and going into the off season. So like this morning, I already did my 30 minutes of cardio. So, trying to stay on top of that kind of stuff. Cause like, yeah, you might not want to do it, but, and you might like, let's say too, like a lot of people will like go from, waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning to then all of a sudden, maybe like 9 or 10 o'clock and sleeping in. But like that really just throws off. It's one of those things where I look at it almost like depression. It's when you feed into that kind of stuff. Yeah, you might not want to do it, but if you do it, then overall the return, you feel much better. So it's like if someone's depressed and they sleep all day or whatever, like obviously that is detrimental to their overall state of depression. So it's one of those things, if you can force yourself to do these kind of things, you feel better about it. So I think that's another thing too for post show. A lot of people, they stop doing the cardio, they sleep in, they sort of start just eat whatever, or don't really track their food and that kind of stuff. And it seems like great in the moment, but then like 2 or 3 weeks later, they're like, why am I so like down and out and this kind of stuff? And, I think staying on that regimen and that routine, what I mean, can keep you sort of from, going into that little bit of a depressed state after a show too.
100%. I appreciate you touching on that stuff, Nate. So,
Yeah.
let's get into the Boston Pro. It's your IFBB Pro debut. You kind of already touched on, it's kind of like hometown and all of that type of stuff. So, why don't you just talk about maybe when did you kind of head down to the Boston area? Because you're about 40 miles out, if I remember correctly. When did you kind of head down toward that area? Talk about maybe the couple days leading up. hearing about some of these top guys that were coming in from Columbus the previous weekend, and just some of that excitement, and then just walk us through show day, if you don't mind, Nate.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it was really cool just because I hadn't, like I said, all the shows that I had done previously, at least until like 2018, I'd always traveled or flown. So like I was only doing national shows since 2018. So it was a different experience because I didn't have the anxiety and sort of the stress and the worry of flying and traveling, because you're always like, oh, did I forget anything? You go through everything 1,000 times. You're like, is my flight going to get canceled, or like, am I going to make that kind of stuff? There's a little bit more anxiety and more of like that kind of piece. And obviously, like I said previously with you, was you're traveling a little bit further out, so it's one of those things, like, because you always, if you're flying for a show, you always want to get there a day or two early, just get acclimated, that kind of stuff. And also like get all your food ready, set up your little area, where you're staying at. And obviously, you want to fly ahead of schedule too, because if your flight does get canceled, you want a little bit of a cushion, so there's no mistake there. So this was really different for me because the peak week or whatever, I'm sort of just at home chilling, Thursday, and then even Friday morning, like still at home. And it was really nice. Honestly, it was like, I think it made a big difference as far as like stress, anxiety, and just sort of staying cool and calm, collected. Just because, I got my dogs here, and we're in our element, me and my girlfriend, and just sort of, we got our Netflix and all that kind of stuff. And it's just sort of nice being at home until that final stretch. And then it's like, okay, I guess there's a show tomorrow, it just sort of sneaks up on you a little bit more, which was actually like a nice change. So it's pretty cool. So Friday, as some of you guys know, my coach is Andrew Barry, and he came down. He lives a little bit more north than me, but he came down Friday afternoon, and that's sort of when it started. So he came, looked at me at my apartment, and then everything was good to go, and then we drove down together. Well, we both take separate cars, but we all went down to the venue and checked into the hotel. So Friday night, checked in the hotel. And it was actually pretty cool. The first person I run into when we get there is Ronnie Coleman. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, just like leading up to it too, I was just going to say, is it was just really cool because, like, all these crazy bodybuilders, with high prestige, like Olympians, are, doing the show. And then, at the last week after the Arnold, obviously he lost, William Bonac, announces he's doing Boston, which was like a huge thing for me because I'm a very big Bonac fan. And obviously, I don't know how many more years he has left. And it's cool because if you think about it, he hasn't had to do a qualifying show for maybe 5 or 6 years because he's always been top 5 at Olympia. And so this is like his only regional show, or tier 2, whatever you want to call it, pro show that he probably will ever do again. You know what I mean? If you think about it. So that was pretty cool to have that sort of privilege. And then, yeah, so when we got to the hotel, it was just sort of one of those things. It just sort of, that's when everything starts, with, you eat a meal, or, have coach look you over, eat a meal, sort of adjust, water, that kind of stuff. And compared to nationals, not much had really changed. Like for us, we always keep it really simple. We don't really push food super hard, but, just enough. Andrew's got a great eye that I trust in. So he sort of just makes those calls. And, most of the time it's usually anything from, 400 to 600 grams of carbs, for Thursday, Friday, keeping water relatively moderate, like 5 to 7 liters. And for us, we keep our water in, which is another good thing for health too. You know what I mean? So, and you feel a lot better post show. So obviously it depends on the body type, but we figured out that, having our water in our system makes us have a much better look. So that was one of the things that we did. And it was really just like easy work for us. So the good thing is, like, me and Andrew have been together for, I want to say 6 years almost now. And he's the only coach I've ever worked with. Just because, I mean, it works. So why am I going to leave? Like, that's another thing I don't get. That's a whole nother topic, but everything works. So why am I going to, you know what I mean? And we have a great relationship, great friendship, and we have a good separation as far as coach friendship type goes. So, I obviously respect him highly, and and he's also my friend. So it's one of those things. It just works, you know what I mean? And it's always, we have such a great memories and time together. So like we've done this like so many times, and every time it's just like such a big bond together. So it's something I really appreciate with him. It's just like really we have like an emotional bond together because of this, and it's really cool. So yeah, Friday night, it was just one of those things, like I just was coming to life, and my mindset was definitely becoming more confident. And like I said before, it was weird because like in the previous days, I didn't really feel like I looked anything spectacular. And then, like I said, like once we got to the hotel, everything was sort of coming to life. And, I was posing and, like looking pretty freaky and that kind of stuff. And it was getting exciting. And then, Abby and Andrew were like watching me and, just sort of giving me, I could tell it was genuine. They were like, holy, you look crazy and that kind of stuff. And, that obviously gives you a boost of confidence. And then it was, it was a really great time because we also were able to bring our dogs. So this is the first show I've ever done with the dogs there. And it sounds sort of silly, but it makes a huge difference as far as making you feel like homey and comfortable. You're laying in bed and the dog's cuddle up beside you. Like, I don't know, it's just relaxing, and that was a really nice treat. And Andrew brought their dog and they behaved really well. And they got a lot of attention when we were walking around the hotel. So it was really fun that way. And then, so pretty much, Saturday morning, we woke up and everything was like really on schedule. I mean, I really couldn't be more happy with how we looked. And and it was pretty cool because I think I really liked my look at nationals, but I thought like it was almost could have been even better here, which was pretty, I don't know if I'd say surprising, I guess, but it's a hard feat to achieve, to do one show, look really, really good, and then do another show 12 weeks later and look really, really good, if not better. So I was very like proud as far as like me and Andrew being able to achieve that, because you hear a lot of guys that sort of do shows consecutively and they sort of tend to fade or not quite look as good, and then they get critiqued by people. And most of my feedback all from this whole show was just like, oh man, like very positive. Like it was pretty cool because like people were sending me the live stream of like Bob Ciccarello. He said I could have maybe been first call out, which was pretty crazy. Phil Heath was like, man, his quads are like exploding. And like to hear stuff like that from those kind of people was pretty crazy. And then like, obviously Jose is a local guy too, and he was sort of like, gassing me up a little bit. And it's cool to hear that from like some of those guys, and just like the feedback overall was like, I think I definitely made a little bit of a statement, which was cool. And then like, yeah, if you want me to just go right into show day too.
Yeah, why don't we just go into prejudging and just talk about finals, and I'll have a few other questions for you, Nate.
Yeah, so it was, man, like it's really surreal because just like the day of the show was like crazy because like there was like I said, being the local guy, there was like so many like fans and supporters there, and numerous people like on the comments and stuff like that said, Nate has the loudest crowd there and that kind of thing. And it was just a really cool feeling to one, step on stage and you could really hear cheers and excitement. And it was like very like, it's hard to describe like how it feels, but it was a really cool feeling. And then to be walking around like with people like wearing my shirts, coming up to me, asking me for pictures. And it was really, really cool because, my mom was there. And like I said, she hasn't been to a show for so long. And also like if people will go back, if you guys want to watch my first episode with Quentin, we talk about my drug addiction and that kind of stuff in my past. And so for me, this is a really big highlight because my mom was there and she had been in the thrills of the drug addiction and sort of the mayhem that I was causing and all that kind of stuff. And the worry of, is my son gonna, am I gonna get a call from someone saying my son's either dead or in jail or that kind of stuff, to now she's at this show, seeing people come up to me, ask for my picture. I had like a banner with me doing a Most Muscular on it for my sponsor was there. I had a cookie that was made for me with a picture of me. So all these little things my mom is now seeing, and it's really emotional for her because obviously, like I said, you know, she lived through some dark periods, a long phase actually of me, you know, going through all that stuff. And now she's seeing like, wow, my son is a professional bodybuilder and people are, you know, excited to see him. And, you know, that kind of stuff is pretty crazy, honestly. Like it's, you know, I never would have thought that that's where I would have been, you know, in this moment. So it's really, yeah, it's a little emotional, like like just to think about it, I guess, you know, because there's phases in my life where I thought were big achievements, like just to touch on it a little bit, but you know, I remember when I became a general manager at a fast food restaurant, that was a really big deal for me because I had felonies and bad credit score, and you know, I didn't have a license, and you know, so someone gave me an opportunity there, and I was like, man, this is like crazy, like that I'm a general manager at a fast food restaurant, and now like I've leveled up even like a lot more, and now I'm like a professional bodybuilder. I make a living off of coaching. I'm very happy doing that. Just and like I said, my mom gets to witness all this, and like so it's just really a dream come true, sort of say. But and then like so like obviously like I'm saying is at prejudging, it was also cool because obviously, so I'm backstage, you know, with like William Bonac, Steve Kuklo, and Justin Rodriguez, and Regan, and those kind of guys, Samson Dauda, you know, Max Charles. Like these are all like guys that have been on the Olympia stage. You know what I mean? Phil Kahara, shout out to him. He should be on the Olympia stage soon, but he's a really good guy too. And like so I posted some pictures too on my Instagram. I got a most muscular next to William Bonac and Steve Kuklo. So that was like crazy for me, like as a fan, you know, and just to be like standing next to them hitting a pose, like it's pretty insane. Um, but yeah, I was like, so prejudging was like a little nervous, you know, but I felt okay because I knew I looked good. But I was one of those things where I was like, okay, am I gonna get dead last here? You know, so that was a little bit of like a little fear. But it was for some reason for myself. Some people don't really like you hear bodybuilders that are like, oh, I don't really like being on stage. I just like the process of it. I love being on stage, and I think people can see that. So when I got on stage for like my prejudging like individual, it was like you could hear the crowd, and I just like really got into it, and I felt like I nailed everything, and I was really stoked. And then so they started doing the call outs, and obviously I knew I was going to be in first call out just because the caliber of people at the show. I mean, you have, like I said, we got 5 or 6 Olympians, so there's your first call out immediately. You know what I mean? Which is fine. But then so they start doing the other call outs, and then they have one guy that was in the second call out. And then they call the third call out, which is the last call out. But that's, you know, me and 4 other guys. And one of the guys was from second call out. And I start on the end, and then I start moving in. And so like I beat the guy from the second call out, which was pretty cool. And then, you know, after finals or whatever, when the score comes back, I end up placing 8th. So 7th behind Regan, which is pretty crazy. So like, you know, I didn't place dead last. And the people that have beat me were all people that have won pro shows. You know what I mean? So that's pretty rewarding in itself. But yeah, and then like, so pretty much prejudging ends, and like the response was just like amazing. Like after, you know, like I go out and, you know, in the hallway or whatever, and everyone's just sort of like, man, you look awesome. Like so crazy. Like everyone was like so pumped for me. So that was like really, really cool. And then, yeah, it's just like, it was cool because just like meeting everyone and talking to everyone after prejudging, it was actually hard because I was trying to get up to my room, and people were just kept on, you know, coming up to me and that kind of stuff. And like, oh, can I, like, we'd take a bunch of pictures with people, and then like someone else would take a picture, and then like you'd bring other people in. And so it's like, it's something to be grateful for, definitely. You know what I mean? And then, so yeah, I mean, pretty much like for us, we thought that after prejudging, there was a chance that we might be able to get compared in that second call out, because at what we saw was at the end of prejudging, I think I was the guy in the third call out that sort of, I ended up, like I said, working my way in the middle, and sort of like I was like right on I was pretty much winning the third call out or whatever. So, and I knew Regan was a little bit off, so I was hoping, you know, they would rejudge us at night. So we pretty much played it safe, you know what I mean, as far as like after the show. And like that's the difference between a pro show too, is you're gonna get more stage time. So like you don't want to, like, even if you're like dead last, you still want to hold it together because you want to put up, keep it professional, and you get another comparison at night, and you get your routine and that kind of stuff. So, you know, obviously we're pretty smart about that. We just wanted to get better and try our best to come back at the night, even improved. So the good thing was that I did get what I wanted. So we got the comparison at finals again. So this time they only split it into two groups where they had, you know, 6 guys, I think, in the first call out, and then they had 5 guys in the second call out. So I started on the end again, Regan's in the middle, and then they finally work my way in. And then I get to, you know, literally pose next to Regan in that call out, which is like pretty cool. You know what I mean? Considering I think he's won 2 or 3 pro shows, and obviously he's a huge name. So it's really cool to get. I got a couple pictures of him and me together at the finals. He's a really nice guy, by the way, awesome guy. He was really like supportive and talked to me a couple times leading up to the show, which is really cool. I mean, he has so many followers and he's so busy, so he's definitely a really humble, nice guy. And so that was, I mean, that was probably like the highlight, is like that, like, okay, like I was like pretty close to Regan, you know what I mean? Obviously there's a lot more work to be done. And I think Regan has like an immaculate structure. So, and he was a little off. So it's not necessarily like fair to say that, but it is what it is, you know, on any given day. That's the way bodybuilding is. So whether someone's off and someone's on, that's just how, you know, that's how we play it. Um, so yeah, that was like a pretty big highlight. And then like when I did my finals routine, like it was pretty cool because I felt like it was actually, I put together a good routine, whereas before I really hadn't. Like I just sort of winging it, you know what I mean? So this time it was like pretty cool. I felt like I had a good routine. And I'm happy I did, because every single person sort of put together a good routine, because now you're at the pro level. So I sort of looked like an idiot if I just went out there and did like something really quick, you know. So I felt really good about that, watching it back. So that was really cool. And then yeah, it was just then the school pretty much finals and you know, I'm just with the friends and family and so many supporters, and that was probably a big highlight of the weekend, was just everyone coming up to me like that I know through the New England area, and you know, a lot of people wearing my shirts and that kind of stuff was just really cool. And you know, then the scorecard comes out, and it was just like, I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like, this is my first pro show, and I beat 3 other pros that had already been pro, which was cool. And then I was placed right behind Regan, you know, so it definitely gave me a lot of confidence going forward as far as like what I can do as a pro that I don't think I had before. So there's 2 ways a pro debut can go. One, you know what I mean, you can get your confidence shot down real quick, or 2, you can have more confidence than you had before, you know what I mean? So, and for me, I've never always been like a really super confident guy. Like, you know, like I'm not like a Nick Walker or one of those guys where I speak it into existence, or you know, like, oh, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. I just take it each goal by each goal. So meaning like, okay, like I had no expectations going into the Boston Pro, but I will show up at my best. So I don't believe in that whole, you know, I think it depends on the person and their psyche as far as like what they need to do. But some people need to tell themselves that, and everyone, that they're going to win. And some people don't need to do that, and they could still do great. So when people are like, oh yeah, you have to believe you're going to win or don't do it at all, I don't really believe in that, honestly. For me, I can still show up at my best no matter what, even if I know the odds are against me, because people say that, but like, okay, so what am I going to do? Not do the Boston Pro because there's 5 Olympians there? You know what I mean? Like, nah, like, or what am I going to go pick some show that I know there's only going to be like, you know, not many people, or go overseas and try to like cherry pick a show? I don't know. I just don't think it's, that's like a reason, I guess. And like I said, for myself, that's why I always come in condition, because I always held myself to a standard. I think a lot of guys, you know, they turn pro and they might have looked their best, but they never look as good as they did when they turned pro, because they sort of get, the confidence is shot down a little bit, or they're used to winning and now they're, you know what I mean, not quite winning right off the bat, that type of thing. So like I said, that mental piece is so huge in bodybuilding. You need to be mentally strong, because like some people, maybe they would have been into their pro debut and they get dead last, and then all of a sudden like their dreams are shot down. But it doesn't mean that your career is over, but if mentally you accept it that way and you sort of beat yourself up over it, then obviously that can be a detriment and, not sort of keep you from going forward.
100%, man. I've been listening to a couple of podcasts with Jay Cutler on there, and he's been talking about, a little bit of his backstory. And, his first Olympia, he got 15th place out of 16. And he admitted on a couple of these podcasts I've been listening to over the weekend, because I was traveling, that, that was tough for him, because, he came up pretty quick through the amateur ranks and things like that, and had a lot of attention. But he got 15th out of 16th at his first Olympia. It's like, well, what is he supposed to do? Jay Cutler just, whatever, I suck. I mean, come on, man. Like you, if you're an athlete, if you're competitive, you want to get in there, you want to fight, you want to see where you stand. And, I love that attitude, Nate, because you do hear that a lot. A lot of people, a lot of people even come on the podcast. It's like, I'm only going to, do this if I win a pro show, or I'm only going to do it. It's like, man, like just bring your best and see what happens, because that's really what bodybuilding is. There's so many variables outside of our control when we compete. Right. So I really appreciate and love that attitude,
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, I want to touch base is, like, for me, it's like I said, I focus on the small goals to get to the big goal. So let's say I've just placed 8th, at this show, like that's a good starting point for me. So now what is my goal? To place maybe top 5 at my next show. So I don't necessarily need to go in here, oh, I need to win my pro debut or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I'm only going to compete if I'm going to win. Like, I don't know. I think that's, yeah, maybe for the 1%, you know what I mean? Like a Nick Walker, but for most, that's not how it's going to go. And I was always like that as an amateur too. Like, okay, before I get to nationals, I want to, win an overall at a smaller show, then win an overall at like maybe a more stacked local show. And then I did junior USAs, and okay, I won my class at junior USAs. Okay, now I go to nationals, that kind of thing, sort of work my way up the ranks. And like I said, have those small goals. So for me, when I went to nationals, it wasn't like, oh, I need to go to nationals and win right off the bat. Like my goal was, okay, I need to place top 5 and then go from there. You know what I mean? So it's the same idea here, like I'm ecstatic, where some people might be disappointed they got 8th out of 11th, you know what I mean? But for me, this just shows me, how close I am. And, it just gets me excited to keep working. And like I said, then my next goal would be, okay, next sometime I want to crack top 5 at a pro show. And then we go from there once I do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I love that attitude. I want to ask you here now, you're a big bodybuilding fan, you're a big bodybuilding junkie. Was it really surreal? Was it kind of hard for the fanboy in you not to like just get really jacked up in terms of like, seeing the Ronnie Colemans? I mean, Jay Cutler was there. I mean, and even being like backstage and seeing all these Olympians, was it hard not for the fanboy not to come out in you, Nate, or did you keep it pretty cool?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like pretty crazy, because even the night before we had like an athletes meeting, and like, so we're sitting in a small room, there's not a bunch of people in there. It's literally like, so, and then you got like, okay, like Phil Heath was sitting in there, Bob Ciccarello. And then obviously you got the athletes, Dexter Jackson was in there. And then, like I said, you got William, Justin, Steve Kuklo, all those guys, sitting in the room, and it's like, holy crap, this is pretty crazy. And then, even like George Farah was rocking around, who's, been doing this for so long. And, Jay was walking around in there too. And Jay was really, me and Jay, so he knows me a little bit because I competed locally at his shows, and he's pretty cool and sort of knows who I am. So he was coming right up to me and gave me a lot of kind words. And even Bob was like, oh no, you're going to do great, even if it's your pro debut, that kind of stuff. So it was really, everyone was really like welcoming. So that was really nice. It was no one was really like, oh, like you're the new guy or whatever, that kind of thing. So everyone was really cool. And much more, I think people don't really understand that these guys are actually like really like good with each other. So like Steve was helping Bonac like pump up backstage, like that kind of thing. Like people are like, I guess they just don't see it, but they don't realize that these guys do have like a camaraderie and stuff like that. And they don't hate each other. You know what I mean? Like, and Justin was walking around fist bumping everyone, and you know what I mean? So it was, everyone was really cool and really nice. Like I think they're in the mindset of like, okay, like we're in this together, but yeah, when we get on stage, like we're fighting and battling. But as soon as we're off stage, like we're all cool with each other type thing. So but yeah, it was like pretty crazy, like because especially like, you know, some of these guys, I always thought I was a taller bodybuilder, but some of these guys are actually like a lot taller than me. So it's sort of weird because I actually felt like I was a little bit shorter at the show. Because like you got Steve, Samson, Regan, they're all like 6 foot. And then even that guy Eslam, who was in my call out, who was really good too. He was like 6 foot. And then Doug Frucci was like 6'1" or 6'2". So, and then I even got a picture with like, so I got a picture with Bonac, and then I got a picture with Kuklo, and I look more like Bonak's stature than I do Kuklo, who's like towering over me and like super wide. So it's like pretty cool to see that too, like as far as comparison goes, because I was always under the impression that I was a taller bodybuilder. But now that I've been on like this kind of stage, I'm like, okay, I'm actually, I feel like I'm more of like, I'm in a good like middle ground as far as that goes. So as far as like the future and like what my structure is, it's like, okay, like I actually look more like a shorter statured bodybuilder than some of these guys, you know what I mean? So that was sort of cool. But yeah, I mean, I think I kept it pretty cool for the most part. I mean, I definitely went up to, when I got my picture with like Steven Bonac, I was like, hey man, like I just like was like, I'm a huge fan. This is my pro debut, like that kind of thing. So, and they were all like really cool. And Max Charles was really nice to me too. He went up backstage and we were talking a little bit. And so it was definitely pretty cool. They definitely like made me feel like, you know, welcome. So that was good.
Yeah, no, that's so cool, man. Like I can't even, even like Nate Tello's been on the podcast, and some of these other guys that we've been able to chat. And it's like, a lot of these guys, a lot of you are fans first, right? And consuming the magazines and all the social media now. And then I can't even imagine, and I will never know. And a lot of us watching and listening will never know, but it's gotta be just so surreal, man. Like one minute you're like watching, so and so's training,
Yeah.
content on YouTube, and then you're backstage with them actually competing. Like it's got to be for some of you guys, it's got to be just like a surreal, weird feeling, and it's so cool, man. So Nate, we're gonna wrap it up here in a couple minutes. I do want to ask you, man. You've just been you've had your nose down grinding, dude, for a long time in terms of nationals in your pro debut. Do you have any thoughts of kind of like what the future holds in terms of competing, or have you guys not even really discussed that quite yet?
I think I got a good idea. So I've always been really good as far as like, okay, picking out my next show and really sticking to it. And, you know, if I say I'm going to do a show, I usually do it, that kind of thing. And it helps me to stay focused. You know what I mean? So even if it's a far ways away, it sort of helps me have the eyes on the prize type thing, like even in the off season. So for me, it's always beneficial to sort of have something picked out or in mind. So for me, like my thought is probably do like New York, Indy. That's my dog, sorry. Uh, it's vicious. So that would be like in May. Sorry.
It's all good, dude.
She's a little beagle, so she's on the hunt now. So yeah, I was looking at like New York and Indy. So that would give me like a good like 14 months or whatever in between, and then maybe do like Toronto, do like a little bit of like a string of shows. Like I said, try to chase that like sort of top 5 placing. And you know, sort of like I said, give my body a little bit of a break for maybe 2 or 3 months, that kind of thing. Just sort of recover, do it smart. And so another thing too is I don't know about next year I'd be ready, but my main goal is to sort of get a physique that I can be placing in the top 5 and earn enough points and get to Olympia. So that's like my main goal. Obviously that's a little bit far away right now, but for me, my advantage is I can get in really good condition and I can do numerous shows and, like I said, stay good, whereas a lot of people can't really do that. But like even my first year when I did in 2016, I did 6 shows, you know what I mean? From a span of like almost the whole year. So, and I was really good at like most of all those shows except for the last one, but it wasn't really because I was like tired. It was because I did something stupid off plan because I was young and dumb and didn't listen to my coach. But so it was, so it's one of those things like I can do a lot of shows and still look good and still, you know, stay on the plan and that kind of stuff. So I think that works in my benefit as far as, you know, chasing points and that kind of stuff. And also too, it might be hard though for me because, so I say like, I wanted to do like New York and Indy and that kind of stuff because it gives me a little bit more time. But I'm not going to lie, it'll be really hard for me not to do the Boston Pro if they have it again next year, because like I said, this is like my hometown show. So for me to not, for me to sit out at that show would be really hard. So that's in the back of my mind too. I do want a little bit more time of an off season. So that's where it sort of comes into play. And it's hard because Boston, if they keep that date, it's hard to keep going. Well, it's not hard to keep going, but it's not necessarily optimal, because the reason why is because they have the Arnold and the Boston, and then from Boston, there's not really anything until May. So that's a little bit of a stretch. So if I was trying to make like do a numerous shows, around each other, it would hard to do that Boston one at start because it's a little bit of a gap, if you will. And honestly, too, it's going to be hard I think they want to keep it around the same time frame, but that also makes it hard too, because it's harder to like climb up that ladder if people from the Arnold keep doing it. Like, it's obviously cool, don't get me wrong, but there's definitely like some kind of like strategy to it in some regard. Like, because let's be honest, like some of these guys say, yeah, like I want to be in the most competitive show and this and that, but let's be realistic. Like Steve Kuklo, who just placed third at this show, and Samson Dowda that just placed fourth, they could have like sat this show out and done like an indie and probably won it. You know what I mean? So that goes for a lot of people, because like you're gonna have guys like that are second at the Arnold go to this show, and that means they're probably a top 5 or almost close to top 5 Olympian. So it's one of those things like, yeah, there is a little strategy, because if you want to qualify and go to Olympia, like then like someone like Steve Kuklo, or like I said, Samson or whatever, Raphael, like they're going to pick something where they know they can qualify at. Whereas if they're going to say like, oh, I'm going to, then next year, like they might not do Boston because, okay, like I know, these heavy hitters are doing it, right?
For sure. Yeah. So as we close it out here, what's kind of that you're going into this off season and prepping for next year then, Nate? What's kind of like I'm sure like most bodybuilders, you want to put on more size, right? But what are like the 1 or 2 areas that you're really going to target in terms of body parts to bring up or add that size onto?
Well, yeah. So one thing, that feedback that I got from a lot of people was like, I'm really complete. I'm not really missing much. So like I said, like you said, overall size is obviously going to be like a big thing, but standing next to these pros, it actually opens your eyes up a little bit more too, as far as like I thought. So one takeaway, I thought actually I had a better back than I thought I did, because I thought my back double bicep was actually a really good pose for me at this show. And I like held my own against some of these guys in that pose. But as far as like chest density, like I have a decent chest, but when I hit like a most muscular next to William Bonac, it sort of opens my eyes a little bit more, like, okay, I could use a little bit more chest density and thickness and shoulder density and thickness, like to stand next to a guy like Steve Kuklo. You know what I mean? Whereas before, like I always thought my chest and my shoulders were sort of a stronger point. So now, it sort of opens my eyes up standing next to these guys, like as far as that goes. And for me, I think my back stuff is like pretty decent. Like obviously it can be better, but when I compare myself to some of the pros, like my hamstrings and my glutes are really good. My back thickness, top to bottom, is really good. I could use a little more taper. And then my quads are always they've gotten a lot better, but they've always been sort of my main focus, like each off season. So just to continue and improve those, just because genetically I don't have like a crazy sweep. So the bigger my legs are and the more I can fill them in, obviously that's going to help me out. And we've done that so far. So it's one of those things that's going to be definitely a focus, is as far as like the training goes, it's going to be quads and probably, chest and delts. Because now I'm standing next to guys that are like structurally big, like I was saying before, like Steve and Regan, like those two guys are very, they take up a lot of real estate, right? So it's one of those things where I want to sort of try to match them on that. So that's sort of where the focus will be.
Excellent, man. Okay, I want to ask you about the Arnold. What were your thoughts? Did you have William, like a lot of people had him winning, or what were your thoughts on the Arnold overall?
Oh man, it was really exciting, really good show. I was really happy about it, just because a lot of people seemed in really great conditioning and that kind of thing. I mean, I was definitely disappointed with Brandon just because I felt like he was a little small, like as far as size goes. It was a little weird because I felt like he was actually getting outsized by a lot of guys. And honestly, I'm a big Brandon fan. Like, and I had him coming into the show winning. I thought he was going to look his best. So there was a little bit of the disappointment there. I definitely had William winning. I don't really see it any other way. I mean, I guess if you have to be there type thing, but I've talked to a lot of people that were there and they still had William winning. So it's a tough call. And honestly, too, if Justin would have had the same look from Friday into Saturday, he definitely dropped the ball going into the finals. But if he would have held on to that look, honestly, I could have had him second and William winning, to be honest with you. Because after prejudging, honestly, I had like Brandon third. I know people probably think that's crazy, but I think what happened though is, partially, I feel like Brandon got a little bit of a nod just because he's who he is. And then secondly, he got the nod because of his shape. But that's sort of frustrating for myself, especially being like more like a grainy, like conditioning guy. Like it's frustrating when you're at 100% like William was, and then a guy that's maybe at like 90 or 85%, but they get the nod because of their structure and shape, which has happened to me before. So it's one of those things. It's a little bit, it's hard pill to swallow sometimes, but that's bodybuilding. And to be one of the best bodybuilders, you have to get really good at losing. You know what I mean? Even if you think you won. Because like a lot of people, there's certain people that obviously would take that and maybe, want to give up or not quite want to or be quite as invested. And it might throw them off as far as like their mental aspect, as far as like, going to work hard every day and that kind of stuff. So like the really good bodybuilders are able to sort of accept those losses and, not really have them affect them. Like I was talking to William at the show and he was just saying like, pretty much like, yeah, man, like it is what it is type thing. And, you just sort of got to move on. And, cause obviously a lot of people were going up to him saying, oh man, I had you winning and that kind of thing, which is nice to hear. But at the same time, it's also a hard pill to swallow too, because you're like, well, that doesn't make me feel any better, but, the fans were definitely behind him. So, and honestly too, I was really, really impressed with Samson. I think he was like sort of the standout of the show just because, he had competed in the fall. And he looked good, but he definitely put on a lot more muscle in a short period of time. And I think his back came up a lot and his conditioning was much better. The only problem with him is hard because I think they just want his glutes to come in, but he doesn't really like have that genetically, I feel like. But he's definitely, if he keeps getting bigger, like no one's going to be able, it doesn't matter if his glutes are in or not, because he's starting to get like really freaky looking, but he's also super aesthetic and he's tall. So he sort of got a really good package. He can definitely be a top 5 Olympian here pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely believe he's a star on the rise. I saw just, like I said, it was my dad's birthday on Saturday. So I was traveling and not plugged into the bodybuilding scene quite as much as maybe I would have been, but I did see just some shots of Samson just in one of the lineups for the Boston, and like his waist, dude, like, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, there was 4 or 5 guys in that call out, and, I just kind of scanned like left to right really quick, and my eyes immediately went to Samson. I've never really seen his physique. I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to him. Obviously, I've seen him like on Fuad's podcast and seen different pictures and heard about him and stuff, but my eyes immediately went right to his waist. And I'm like, okay, like that is something that you can't like just, pull out of your bag. That's something genetic that is obviously on a bodybuilding stage, very important, so
That's another thing too, that sort of opened my eyes up, because now you're, standing on the stage with some of the best pros in the world, and it sort of opens your mind up a little bit more. Whereas, so when I was competing with amateurs, the top amateurs, I felt like I had a really good shape, but now I'm like, oh man, like, not that my shape is bad, but I'm not like, I feel like as a pro, I'm not going to be a shape guy. I'm going to be more like a grainy, like sort of like the Bonac type guy. You know what I mean? So I think, definitely like, because like for me, like standing next to the amateurs, I'm like, okay, like I have a really good shape, that kind of stuff. But then now I'm standing next to Samson, Regan, Steve, like those guys have like big structures, good shape. So it really sort of like opens your mind up, like, oh damn, like, you know what I mean?
yeah, no, for sure, man. It's super cool. All right, man. I want to give you an opportunity. I saw here at some point you started working with HD Muscle and sponsored by them. So why don't you talk about HD Muscle? I I've had a lot of those guys, pros and stuff on the podcast. Seem like great dudes, great company. So why don't you talk about them and then we'll close it out, Nate?
Yeah, for sure. So pretty much after nationals, and like for me, I always do things, I try to do things the right way. So I waited to reach out for any kind of sponsorship, that kind of stuff, until I felt like I was ready, and really could make an impact with the company. And like for me, I'm not just going to choose anyone or sign with anyone. HD is a a company that I believe in before even signing with them. And I feel like they have like a lot of integrity and the quality product. And I really like their sort of brand that they're promoting as far as like the look, the people they have on the team, Dorian's gym up there, that kind of thing. The whole vibe is just sort of really gets me. And I feel like I could really promote it. So for me, I don't want to just I won't be able to sign with a company that I don't use and like say that I'm using that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And it's just not me. So for me, I knew it'd be easy to like post and that kind of stuff because I believed in the product and I use it. So that was a huge thing. And I'm very, very happy that that's who I reached out to, and it was a really good fit. And I felt like I was smart, waited. They've been huge, and it continues to have a better relationship the more we go on. Just for the show, they showed me a lot of support, and they have so many athletes. So it's one of those things. It's really cool. Like Dorian will reach out and message me here and there, and he's a super, super, super busy guy. So he's got so many things going on. So for him to like reach out and message me and tell me I look great and that kind of stuff is just awesome. And then Quentin and Dorian's sister were at the Boston Pro. So that was great to see them. They were sort of representing HG. And then like, after the show, like little things like, they sent me a little bag with like a couple of t-shirts and a cookie and a little note saying like, we're really proud of you and that kind of thing. Like that goes a long way to me, that really felt good. It showed me they appreciated me. And, they had Mariah was taking pictures, Dorian's sister. So she has some really great pictures she sent me. She put in a post like, oh, like me, Phil, and the fitness girl that they have on there. Jacqueline. They made a post all about us. And, it was just really felt really good and really supportive. And I felt like I really did them proud this weekend. Cause at first, it's one of those things like, man, I felt like, it's one of those things where I was a somebody and now you're starting over as almost like the small fish again. So for me to sign with someone like HD, was such a big company, they got amazing athletes, that kind of thing. I felt like I was starting over a little bit. And for this show, I felt like I really did them proud and sort of earned my spot, if you will. And yeah, just everything's been great. They've treated me awesome. It's easy to get in contact with them. It's just been a good fit. You know what I mean? I think that's what it's all about, is finding a company that you fit with, that you feel like your morals and integrity are on the same page as them. You have like a good relationship with them. And Dorian's such a person that I respect, and just in general, just as far as like business coaching, what he's doing, he's always pushing himself to the limit as far as taking on more load and always not settling as far as where he's at as far as success. He continues to push himself, and he's a competitor too. So, to manage all that is just really impressive. And I know he's a huge bodybuilding fan too. And he pays attention to like the guys and that kind of stuff. So it's not one of those things where you're just sort of working for someone that's, just the CEO of the company, that kind of thing. He's actually hands-on, and, so that's been really great there.
100%, man. All right, Nate. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you would like to leave us before I close this out?
I just want to say, like, I'm very grateful for anyone that's reached out to me, taken a picture with me, showed their support as a fan, because for me, it's just not, it seems like unreal. I guess I don't really look at myself as anyone but like a normal person. And so for people to, show that appreciation, all the messages, all the support, people have been like so great. And, it feels really good to have people sort of have my back, believe in me and that kind of stuff. So I'm just really grateful for all those people out there. Thanks.
For sure. Just throw out your Instagram, and then if you have like a discount code or anything for HD, why don't you share that with us too, please, Nate?
Yeah, sure. So you guys can find me it's just at Nate Spear. I do have a YouTube page called Nasty Nate Spear. We put out a little bit of content. It's definitely hard to manage. So, but we're going to try to put out some more stuff here or there. So you can check me out over there too. And then, like I said, I'm with HD Muscle, so my code there is Nasty Nate. If you have any questions about the product, you guys can always DM me, that kind of stuff, what I use and that stuff. They actually has a really good kidney supplement that I'm really big on right now, especially being post-show, into the show, recovery, that kind of stuff. Like I said, health supplements are huge. We want to use those to our advantage. We want to stay as healthy as we can, combat anything kind of stuff like that. So little stuff like that goes a long ways for sure.
Cool. All right, Nate, I appreciate you, man. I think this is round 3 on Behind the Muscle. Thanks for taking some time to share about your pro debut. Okay.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
For sure. All right, all of you who are tuning into another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, thank you so much. Just a couple quick things. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube, and then also take this episode of IFBB Pro Nate Spear, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Nate, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know you listen specifically to this episode and found great value in it. And then I just want to encourage all of you, if you haven't done so already, follow Nate on Instagram, support him through HD Muscle using his code. Nate's an awesome guy. Like, he's been on here 3 or 4 times. I'm going to continue to bring him on. He gives us his time. He's kind of given us that behind the scenes of the bodybuilding life as an amateur, now as a pro. So make sure you support Nate through HD Muscle. Go buy his t-shirt. I bought one. They're super comfortable. They're awesome, awesome gear. So I appreciate all of you. And in closing, finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.